Okay, let's then try and size up what this now means for the 2G case. As I said, one of the most high-profile cases the country has seen involving top corporates, politicians and bureaucrats. I'm joined now by Paranjoy Guha Thakurta, senior journalist who's been tracking this case. Subramanian Swamy, who really has been relentless when it has come to the 2G case, president of the Janata Party. Prashant Bhushan, senior lawyer who's appeared in this case, so they are fully aware of all the facts in the case. Vikas Singh, former additional solicitor general, joins us. What this means really for our judicial system if the CBI prosecutor is allegedly colluding with the accused, and DR Karthikeyan, former director of the CBI, also joining us. Appreciate all of you joining us. First reaction, let me come to you, Dr. Swamy, for your first reactions to what you've heard and seen. What does this imply? Are you surprised by it or shocked in any way, or this is hardly surprising to you?
Well, I would say I'm both surprised and that it hasn't come out so far, and it's come out. I should congratulate the CNN IBN for having obtained this tape, and whoever did the taping, I consider him a great patriot, and he remains anonymous, and we should thank him. But let me say that it is inevitable where in lakh crores the amounts were being dispersed, that a cronyism that exists in our society, this kind of thing is going to happen. But what has happened is, like in the Watergate, a deep throat has given you vital tape, and as a consequence of which the whole Watergate investigation took a new turn. And the same way, I think what you have done is given a huge dose of adrenaline to the investigation in this matter, and I am quite optimistic now that we'll get to the truth.
You will get to the truth. I'm going to come back to what it means for the case itself, because the case is still before the Supreme Court. But Prashant Bhushan, you have argued for the longest time that the CBI in particular, the autonomy of the CBI in high-profile cases is under question. Here, possibly the CBI has transferred the official. They have probably acted on their own in a sense, so that's good. But do you believe that the real rot, you heard the CBI director saying that there are few rotten apples, it's an aberration. Do you believe this is an aberration, or this is the reality that in high-profile cases, it is very likely that the CBI prosecutor could well be in collusion with a top politician, or as it appears in this case, a top corporate?
No, absolutely. We are seeing this repeatedly, especially in the 2G case, where it's not merely the top corporates but also top politicians who are involved. And the CBI being controlled by the government, in a case like this, there is bound to be enormous pressure from the top on the CBI to soft pedal many of these cases. For example, in the Reliance Swan case, they have not charge sheeted Anil Ambani, even though it was absolutely clear that about 1,000 crores were transferred from Reliance to Swan for the purpose of getting this company to apply for the license, even though they were not eligible to apply for a second. Reliance was not eligible. Now, some relatively minor officials of Reliance have been charge sheeted, but the main official without whose signature this money could not have been transferred, these companies could not have been created, he has not been charge sheeted. So therefore, I am not at all surprised that in a case like this, this is what has happened. When a case is being monitored by the Supreme Court virtually on a monthly or even sometimes weekly basis, for a public prosecutor of the CBI to collude so brazenly with the accused takes a lot of gall and guts, and he would get those guts only if he is assured, or rather if he is being pushed from the top to help the accused in this case.
Okay, so you believe that in some way the public prosecutor has almost got a sanction to do what he has by someone at the top. Vikas Singh, former additional solicitor general, are you shocked by what it reveals? If you remember, a few years ago there was the BMW case. In that, again, the lawyers of the two sides, the prosecution and defense, were found colluding with each other. But here the stakes are much higher. What does this suggest about the way in which our prosecution system works?
Rajdeep, in this country now, nothing really shocks you, because anything can happen in this country with the kind of corruption that has permeated in the entire system. One can expect this kind of a thing happening almost everywhere. And the larger issue actually which we must address is, of making the CBI independent. And CBI can be made independent only if it is taken out of the governmental control the appointment of the director, the transfer postings within the CBI, the appointment of public prosecutors. There should be a transparent method of appointing public prosecutors. These are all people who are appointed on parvi. That's the system that is prevailing today. So what do you expect of these people? What kind of probity do you expect from them?
Let me just take that to Mr. Karthikeyan. Let me just take that to Mr. Karthikeyan. Mr. Karthikeyan, is this something that you believe could be the tip of the iceberg? And given the scales involved, the amount of money involved in a case like this, and the kind of individuals involved, to expect a public or the CBI prosecutor to be immune for it, from this kind of pressure, would in itself be a bit of a surprise.
Mr. Rajdeep.
Yes.
4 years back, the Supreme Court Bar Association had organized a conference on investigation and prosecution in Vigyan Bhavan. I had also been invited for that, and I spoke at a session presided over by a sitting judge of Supreme Court. He said, while it is very important the investigating officers, supervisory officers should be men of great integrity and competence, you must pay also attention to how we are appointing the law officers. The law officers belonging to a particular political party or because of the personal loyalty, they should not be appointed. They should be competent also, they should be men of integrity, because I am personally aware, I suspected in many cases what was the CBI was telling was not being carried. I asked my successors, why did you make statement? He said, no, they didn't take instruction from us. They make the statements on their own, contrary to what I said.
So you're saying that you're saying despite the integrity of investigating officers.
What has been found out? Kindly allow me to. You have invited me. Allow me to talk. I have taken the trouble to come because of your invitation.
Go ahead.
Let me complete.
Yes.
I want to tell something which is very relevant.
Yes.
Now, CBI suspecting its own prosecutor is a very rare thing, and I don't think it is only the tape. They must have followed, there must have been reason for the CBI to suspect the conduct of this particular person.
Right.
So there is a recording also. Now, assuming, I have no reason to suspect the genuineness of the tape or why the CBI suspected this gentleman.
Yes.
Of course, it is subject to establishment of the guilt in a proper way. This is unethical, unprofessional, breach of trust, and I would call it treacherous. It's an act of treachery.
You're calling it an act of treachery.
Such things are going to be tolerated or allowed.
Do you believe that the CBI would have known about it?
Treachery of the worst type.
Do you believe that the CBI would have known of it, sir?
Not only be removed from the, not only prosecutor, they must be removed from practice, because Advocates Association to remove him, debar him from practice was evidence established, I'm telling you.
Right.
But I am prepared to accept, Ranjit Sinha's version that they have got a very, strong reason to suspect this. And as he said, there no organization at any level can say we only have angels. We have seen at every level there are some black sheep, and they have to be identified, weeded out.
Okay,
I compliment the CBI for bringing it out openly, boldly, in public knowledge.
Okay, you're complimenting the CBI for at least exposing itself. The agency seems to have for once done a sting operation on one of its own. But Paranjoy, you want to make a point of what does this reveal now about the nature of this 2G case? Where does this take the 2G case itself, given the fact that if all these months, and this could only be one of many tapes that are floating around, where will it leave the most important trial that the country has seen in terms of corporates, politicians and bureaucrats?
Rajdeep, many of us had been feeling that certain sections within the CBI were deliberately weakening their own case. Now, if this conversation is genuine, if indeed the public prosecutor was colluding with the accused, then this merely proves that there were elements within the CBI who were deliberately trying to weaken the case. Why they were doing it, whether on account of some allurement, but what is clear is here we have the public prosecutor asking how much a lawyer like him would have got if he was not a public prosecutor. I think if indeed this recording was made 5 or 6 months ago, then I would say there is a very strong case for reopening. I mean, the judges would be within their right to call for a re-examination of the witnesses, and a new prosecutor should be given that opportunity to re-examine and cross-examine the witnesses. One last point, this thing about what the CBI director, Mr. Ranjit Sinha, is saying, that there are no angels in any organ. I mean, it's not that every organization only has angels. This is an aberration and damage control. He's controlling the damage, but he's admitting damage has been done. Now, we don't know how much damage has been done to the case.
You know, Dr. Swamy, is that your worry? Is that your worry that given the kind of people involved in a case like this, a public prosecutor is perhaps the most vulnerable? A CBI prosecutor is perhaps the most vulnerable to any allurement, and that is something, as Mr. Karthikeyan himself is admitting, that perhaps in the CBI chain, that is something which we have never looked at, and this could have huge implications for all the high profile cases, whether it's Mulayam's DA case or whether it is the 2G case that the CBI investigates.
Well, first of all, I have interacted with the CBI because I have myself have a trial court case, ongoing trial court case. I must tell you that there is no such thing as an homogeneous CBI. There are some very, very bright people there, very good, they themselves confide in me or some other things that are going wrong. So I don't think that this is an unrescuable situation. The trial has been damaged beyond recovery. I think what has happened is it has given a huge boost to go ahead now with speed in this case. In fact, this will improve the prosecution situation than actually detract from it.
But a quick word before I take a break. Prashant Bhushan, your sense then that in many of these high profile cases, the point I made with Dr. Swamy also, is the CBI prosecutor vulnerable? What this story is showing is the vulnerability of the CBI prosecutor, who's a critical element in the investigation, but could well in the end be sharing information at the trial stage with the other side. If this is true, it creates a huge question mark over every high profile case in this country which is being handled by the CBI, because it entirely depends on the integrity of that prosecutor.
Yes, unfortunately, while the CBI is essentially controlled by the government in terms of their transfers, postings, promotions, suspensions, etc., at the level of the director, some degree of at least security of tenure has been given to the director. So far as these prosecutors are concerned, they are directly controlled by the government, and therefore they are even more vulnerable not merely to corruption but also pressure from the government and influence from the government. And in a case like this, where large corporates and such senior ministers etc. are involved, you would expect that even more than the CBI, in this case the CBI officers are being directly sort of monitored by the Supreme Court, and I believe that some of the CBI investigators in this case are outstanding persons, and they are trying to do their best.
But can a public prosecutor end up compromising their good work, which is the fear?
Oh, absolutely, totally.
So that's the fear which is coming out. So here is really, and what is the fear is that this could be the tip of the iceberg. This could be happening in case after case. Let's take a break. What are the lessons that we are then going to have to learn? We'll come back with that. What are the lessons? What is the road ahead now? Remember, the JPC meets tomorrow on this case. The Supreme Court is monitoring it. How big can this get, and what does this mean for the ethics of both corporate India as well as our judicial system if they are in collusion with each other? Back in a moment with plenty more. Welcome back. Once again, the big story that's been breaking tonight, a story that's already creating waves. I can tell you JPC members are asking for these tapes. The CBI is now taking the audio tapes which have been shown on CNN IBN to the Supreme Court. It is a case which involves some of the biggest names in politics in corporate India and the bureaucracy, the 2G case. For the last 3 years, this case has become synonymous with a corrupt system. As CNN IBN tonight has revealed another dramatic twist, it shows possible collusion between the prosecution and the high-profile accused of a case being monitored by the Supreme Court. The CBI is suspecting its own prosecutor of aiding the accused. It has registered a preliminary inquiry report that has named the lead 2G prosecutor AK Singh. The preliminary inquiry report also names Unitech MD Sanjay Chandra. CBI says they now possess the audio recording and suspect the voices of Singh and Chandra. CBI says the prosecutor shared legal strategy with the accused. CBI says the lead 2G prosecutor AK Singh has now been removed from the case. CNN IBN has accessed that audio which led to a PE naming Chandra and the 2G prosecutor. The CBI director told CNN IBN he has informed the Supreme Court, CBC and Law Ministry now on the revelations. I'm going to get more reactions on this at the moment. Vikas Singh, as a former additional Solicitor General, you are before I come to you, I want to go to Prakash Javadekar, who has been involved through the JPC on this case. Mr. Javadekar, your first reactions to this to this tape, sensational tape, in a way which is revealing collusion, alleged collusion between the CBI public prosecutor and the accused in this high profile case? Mr. Javadekar?
Yes.
Your first reactions to what we are revealing, that there could be possible collusion in the case between the prosecutor of the CBI and the accused.
Your story is really revealing and very important, because we were suspecting cover-up at certain level, and what we are seeing now, if the investigating officers cannot be tackled, then powers are tackling through CBI's prosecution wing, and that is what is your revelation tells us.
Will you all take this up? Will you all take this up in the JPC? Will this now become the? Will you all quiz the CBI director on it?
No, I am member of the PAC.
Right.
PAC is meeting day after tomorrow.
Right.
And PAC's 2G is always an unfinished agenda, because we see a series of attempts to scuttle the proper investigation. As you recall, that the first PAC report was not allowed to be go through. Then there were continuous efforts from various angles not to allow that discussion. But ultimately, it is unfinished agenda of the PAC also.
Okay, so
we will definitely raise. Yeah.
Okay, you will definitely take it up at the PSC level. Prakash Javadekar, appreciate your joining us. It appears clearly that with the JPC meeting tomorrow, PSC meeting day after, this story will echo in the days ahead. Mr. Vikas Singh, former Additional Solicitor General, you admitted that this is a danger that does exist in our judicial system. I want to know from you, what can be done by the judiciary itself? In a case like this, should the public prosecutor be suspended? Or as in the BMW case, you have a suspension and a fine, and the person returns to practice after a few years?
Well, as far as this case is concerned, of course, Mr. Singh should be debarred from participating in this case till the inquiry is concluded and the facts are really revealed. But the larger issue we should address, if the IPS officers who join the police service, they are through a competitive examination, so they go through a very serious rigmarole of selection. Similarly, what is lacking in our system is the selection of public prosecutors. We normally take people with experience. Now, if you have an independent selection committee, which firstly takes a written examination, then takes an interview, and then does an integrity check, because if you've already worked in the profession for 3-4 years, you already gain a reputation in the profession. So if these three things are checked at this stage, probably this will go a very long way in addressing the system, the malaise that is being faced with the.
But I just want to get quick responses also.
But the prosecutors are being appointed. Prosecutors are being appointed on the basis of considerations which are not, according to me, germane for such appointment.
Mr. D.R. Karthikeyan, would you like the CBI to completely relook at this entire process by which prosecutors are being appointed in high-profile cases? Quick response.
Of course, you must find out even in this case, if it is established, this gentleman is of course proved that he has really indulged in unethical practices. If it is established ultimately, you must all look at how he came in to be in charge of this case. Who asked him to handle this case? You must find out if there is a history behind it also. Apart from that, there must be a proper way of selection of prosecutors. Competence and professional integrity. These are both equally important. A man must be competent and must be a man of conscience and answerable to the law.
Let me just.
We will be beyond all the temptations of either influence or monetary consideration.
Okay, so
that's very important.
You're asking for almost a review.
There must be a.
Sure, you're asking almost for a review of the system. Yes, let me just come to Prashant Bhushan. Prashant Bhushan, is the problem only at the level of the prosecutors? Is this a general problem now that the judiciary has been unable to tackle? I made the point of the BMW case a couple of years ago. Eventually, the individuals concerned return after a suspension and a fine. Is the legal system willing to act against their own?
Actually, this issue involves not merely the method of selection of public prosecutors, but also independence of the Department of Public Prosecutors from the government. Just as the CBI needs to be independent of the government, same way the Department of Prosecution also needs to be independent of the government. This has been said by several law commissions, by several committees, etc., but has not been implemented.
This strengthens your case in a sense for a Lokpal, who would have monitored a case like this.
Absolutely, absolutely. But more important than that, or equally important, this also shows that the whole system of professional accountability of lawyers has failed at the level of the Bar Council. And we have been saying that this system of accountability to your own institution or your own class of people doesn't work. It has not worked in the Medical Council, it has not worked in the Bar Council, and it will not work even in the Judicial Council, which has been proposed in this Judicial Standards and Accountability Bill, because this council will also consist of the direct members of the same judiciary, that is of the same court. Therefore, this needs to be changed. You need to have independent bodies created for holding lawyers like this accountable.
Dr. Swamy, what are the larger implications of this now? What are the larger implications? Because as I've said, there are many high-profile cases involving politicians and corporates, and more of them will probably come to light in the months ahead.
Well, in such cases, I think the American model must be adopted, namely of appointing an independent prosecutor who has complete access to all the documents. He is not under anybody, and it should be ad hoc appointment, and should be a very eminent person who is not likely to be worried about whether he can make 3 lakhs.
But in this case, Lalit is the main counsel who is appearing for the CBI.
You must find Lalit is doing fine. There is no question.
Your worries are the person below.
Lalit doesn't do any investigation. He just does the argument.
Right.
I want an independent public prosecutor appointed who actually has access to any department, any document, and is able to formulate the strategy on how to do it. He can question anybody. In the case of the American public prosecutor, independent prosecutor, he questioned the president.
Sir, I'm getting...
Investigation took a new turn, and the same way I think what you have done is given a huge dose of adrenaline to the investigation in this matter, and I am quite optimistic now that we'll get to the truth.
You will get to the truth. I'm going to come back to what it means for the case itself, because the case is still before the Supreme Court. But Prashant Bhushan, you have argued for the longest time that the CBI in particular, the autonomy of the CBI in high-profile cases under question. Here, possibly the CBI has transferred the official. They have probably acted on their own in a sense, so that's good. But do you believe...
I consider him a great patriot, and we should, he remains anonymous, and we should thank him. But let me say that it was inevitable where in lakh crores the amounts were being dispersed, that a cronyism that exists in our society, this kind of thing is going to happen. But what has happened is, like in the Watergate, a deep throat has given you vital tape, and as a consequence of which the whole Watergate
prosecutor is allegedly colluding with the accused, and D.R. Karthikeyan, former director of the CBI, also joining us. Appreciate all of you joining us. First reaction, let me come to you, Dr. Swamy, for your first reactions to what you've heard and seen. What does this imply? Are you surprised by it, or shocked in any way, or this is hardly surprising to you?
Well, I would say I'm both surprised and that it hasn't come out so far, and it's come out. I should congratulate the CNN IBN for having obtained this tape, and whoever did the taping.
That the real rot, you heard the CBI director saying that there are few rotten apples, it's an aberration. Do you believe this is an aberration, or this is the reality that in high profile cases, it is very likely that the CBI prosecutor could well be in collusion with a top politician, or as it appears in this case, a top corporate?
No, absolutely. We are seeing this repeatedly, especially in the 2G case, where it's not merely the top corporates, but also top politicians who are involved, and the CBI being controlled by the...
Okay, let's then try and size up what this now means for the 2G case. As I said, one of the most high-profile cases the country has seen involving top corporates, politicians and bureaucrats. I'm joined now by Paranjoy Guha Thakurta, senior journalist who's been tracking this case. Subramanian Swamy, who really has been relentless when it has come to the 2G case, president of the Janata Party. Prashant Bhushan, senior lawyer who's appeared in this case, so they are fully aware of all the facts in the case. Vikas Singh, former additional solicitor general, joins us. What this means really for our judicial system if the CBI process